Name something that gets passed around.
A joint.
A joint.
Legalize marijuana is always a very difficult question.
The time is long overdue for us to remove the federal prohibition on marijuana.
From now on, I smoke weed exclusively with white people.
Well, I'll get higher next time.
They're walking on their pants. What's to keep somebody from getting all potted up on weed and then getting behind the wheel?
Don't piss off your old dealer.
Marijuana is not the kind of thing that ought to be legalized.
I know you're not supposed to admit that you smoke pot, but I don't drink alcohol.
Let's get out of here. I have some really good weed back at the hotel.
I used to smoke marijuana.
I don't care if an adult wants to smoke marijuana. They shouldn't go to prison for it either.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Sorry for those of you listening and watching live on YouTube. The encoder crashed there for a second, but we're back. And checking out the folks in the chat room. We are just growing and growing by leaps and bounds. More and more people tuning in to catch the live Russ Belville show, the voice of the Marijuana Nation. You want to help build our audience, please tell people that we're here every weekday, 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. And we're right here at RadicalRuss.com, which directs you to the YouTube live stream that you are watching right now. We got a few moderators in the chat room as well. Doc Herbalist, John Thomas, and my good friend, Lively Libra. And Lively Libra, very important to the show. This automation software that I use to produce the whole show that allows me to do things like this or this is because of Lively Libra. She and her then husband were planning on going to a normal conference. There was an issue where they couldn't go. So rather than have normal refund their conference fees, they applied the conference fees to buy me the first edition of this software. So literally, this show is run on Libra's generosity. So thanks so much for that, Lively Libra. Quick story to tell you out of weednews.co, where you can catch my writing daily. Jimmy Carter cannabis cancer cure claim is pants on fire fake news. While fake news lately may be Donald Trump's favorite reply to any factual story that paints him unfavorably, there is the actual problem of fake news that circulates through the social media feeds of people in their ideological echo chambers. The cannabis community is no exception. Last month, Massroots called out the Weed blog and the Joint blog for their republishing of stories like federal study will pay you $3,000 per week to consume cannabis, and for false reporting of comments by White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer and opinions of Supreme Court nominee Judge Neil Gorsuch regarding marijuana legalization. Now, the respected fact-finding organization PolitiFact has jumped into the fray, designating as a pants-on-fire lie a popular Facebook post that claims former President Jimmy Carter cured his cancer by using medical cannabis. Here's a quote from PolitiFact. In 2015, Carter was really diagnosed with skin cancer that had spread to his brain, but in December of that year, announced the cancer's growth had been arrested and reversed. Instead of medical marijuana, Carter announced that he had been trying a new drug called Keytruda that appeared to control and reverse the metastatic melanoma. The fake story, meanwhile, appears to have originated from a December 7th, 2015 post on a site called SatiraTribune.com. There's no disclaimer on the site, but their Facebook page notes that Satira Tribune publishes satirical and futuristic news. The story is full of cliches about smoking marijuana, including Carter being forgetful and having the munchies for peanuts. But perhaps the biggest giveaway is a faked quote from Carter that reads, quote, I smoke 2 joints in the morning. I smoke 2 joints at night. I smoke 2 joints in the afternoon, and it makes me feel all right. End quote. So that's from PolitiFact, and fortunately, the top marijuana media sites recognize those as the lyrics from the Toys' 1983 song, Smoke 2 Joints, and identified the post as satire. However, far too many marijuana aficionados did not get the joke or only read the headline. That post got passed around all throughout 2016 in the cyber cannabis sphere. Oh, you didn't know that the Toys did Smoke 2 originally from 1983. You may have recognized it as Sublime's 1992 cover version, or maybe Macy Gray's 2012 cover. Anyway, even though President Carter didn't embrace cannabis as a cancer therapy, he has been a prominent figure in the history of legalization. He bravely campaigned in 1975 for the legalization of, or actually not the legalization, but the decriminalization of marijuana in America when he uttered this very famous quote on decriminalization.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana, leaving the states free to adopt whatever laws they wish concerning marijuana.
Carter was the first president to ever make any sort of comment that was favorable to marijuana reform. And lately, though, President Carter flip-flopped on legalization. Back in December of 2012, he was very approving of the idea. He sat down with CNN's Suzanne Malveaux, and this was shortly following legalization in Washington and Colorado, December of 2012, when he seemed to approve of the reforms.
What do you make of the legalization of marijuana and the states that have legalized marijuana?
Well, I'm in favor of it. I think it's okay. I don't think it's going to happen in Georgia yet, but I think we can watch and see what happens in the state of Washington, for instance, around Seattle, and let the American government and let the American people see, does it cause a serious problem or not?
That's President Carter speaking out in December of 2012, but just 6 months later, he was speaking at the National Families in Action. He was keynoting there at their event at the Atlanta Buckhead Hotel and Conference Center, the Marriott there. And just 6 months after saying marijuana legalization was okay, he was praising the work of anti-legalization advocacy group Project SAM and disapproving of legalization in Washington and Colorado. President Carter at the time said, quote, "I do not favor legalization. We must do everything we can to discourage marijuana use, as we do now with tobacco and excessive drinking. We have to prevent making marijuana smoking from becoming attractive to young people, which is, I'm sure, what the producers of marijuana are going to try and do. I hope that Colorado and Washington, as you authorize the use of marijuana, will set up very strict experiments to ascertain how we can avoid the use of marijuana. There should be no advertising for marijuana under any circumstances, and no driving under the influence. We need to avoid the use of marijuana, particularly among young people. I'm very proud of Patrick Kennedy and his Project SAM smart approaches to marijuana. I wish him and Kevin Sabet every success in their independent project to make sure marijuana is handled responsibly." Yep, so, well, he is 90 or so, and he did have brain cancer, so maybe that affected his judgment a little bit. I don't know. All I know is he was right in the 70s. It's time to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, Trump ally Roger Stone warns Donald Trump about going after marijuana. Could this be the turnaround we're all hoping for? We'll see when we return.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
In the interest of fair and balanced journalism, the Russ Belville Show presents the anti-drug public service announcement of the day.
I smoke when I get up in the morning. I smoke when I'm watching cartoons. We smoke in the car on the way to school. I usually smoke after dinner. Sometimes I smoke during my nap.
When you smoke around your kids,
I'm down to about a pack a day.
It's like they're smoking, and smoking around them from birth by age 5 means they'll have inhaled over 100 packs.
I've tried to quit. I need to try again.
Secondhand smoke, it's nothing to kid about.
This has been the Russ Belville Show's anti-drug public service announcement of the day, exclusively on RadicalRuss.com.
When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, fireduplawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email fireduplawyer@gmail.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.
Okay, maybe you're high, too. Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that. Illegal! A public service message from the Russ Belville Show. Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that. This is Dan Michaels from danmichaelsaudio.com, and you're listening to Radical Russ on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everyone. 11 and a half after the hour, and in this segment, we're taking a look at a new report that's up on The Intercept. It's an interview with Roger Stone. Now, Roger Stone is a longtime Republican operative, and he is a part of all of this Russia-Donald Trump controversy that's going on. He's one of the 4 Trump associates who reportedly spoke to Russians, Russian ambassador, Russian operatives, whoever, about or during the campaign for president. And the only one who ever spoke openly about contact with WikiLeaks, which everyone now is looking, or it has been determined by our intelligence agencies, I should say, that WikiLeaks is working in concert with the Russians. And this is a huge controversy, a huge scandal that's brewing, and we still don't even have all the facts in about this. We've got Jeff Sessions making his comments about having never met the Russians, and then it turns out, indeed, he did. And this Stone guy, this Roger Stone, not a great guy. He's like Trump. He calls women awful names on Twitter and you know, a lot of profanity and so forth. But Roger Stone, is a very close confidant to Donald Trump. And this is where the marijuana issue comes in, because the reporter for The Intercept, and the reporter is Matthias Schwartz, writing for The Intercept, got a chance to speak with Roger Stone, and they did talk a little bit about marijuana. So this is the full quote from Roger Stone. Quote, "Generally, I think communications between the president and myself should remain private, but my views are well known. You can find them on Twitter. For example, one cannot oppose federal power and cite states' rights on the transgender bathroom issue, and then turn around and say that you support states' rights to legalize medical marijuana, and then turn around and say that you're going to crack down on states that legalize recreational marijuana. There is an intellectual inconsistency there. It is also harmful to the Trump coalition. Although a lot of anti-marijuana conservatives voted for Donald Trump, it's not their motivating issue. On the other hand, for a lot of young voters and libertarian voters in the Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Gary Johnson realm, this is the issue for them. They voted for Trump based on his assurances about states' rights. Lastly, legal marijuana is a regulated billion-dollar business. If you crack down on the 3 states that have passed recreational marijuana, you'll lose roughly 200,000 jobs. States and counties will go bankrupt because they've already budgeted the tax revenue. So that's an example of the kind of issue about which I'd be happy to share my opinion with the president. End quote. Now, this is great. This is great news, hearing this report, hearing this quote from Roger Stone, because it's the beginning of what I think is of the Republicans recognizing the electoral suicide of attacking the marijuana issue. I think it's in their DNA to want to. They want to be tough on crime. They want to generate fear. They want to have a method of control over certain segments of the population. They want to have an easy way to abrogate people's Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights in a police stop so they can go ahead and stop and frisk or search and seize the people that they want to. But we may be getting to a point here where they recognize in a cost benefits analysis that politically they're worse off going strongly against recreational marijuana than what they'd gain from being tough on crime. And Roger Stone, while he's a despicable human being, is no idiot, and he's very politically savvy. And if this is what he's seeing as a big mistake, as something he would go out of his way to talk to Donald Trump about, then maybe other conservatives are starting to see the writing on the wall as well. Maybe other leaders in the Republican Party are beginning to recognize this. Perhaps comments that we've heard of a vague nature about enforcing federal law from Sean Spicer and from Attorney General Jeff Sessions, maybe those were trial balloons. Maybe that was just a way of testing the waters to see, can we go after this marijuana thing still? Would there be a big pushback? If that's the case, then I'm so glad that myself and others have been sounding the alarm about this and causing people to get very agitated about the possibility of a return to the federal war on marijuana. That reaction, the reaction of people becoming aware of this possibility, becoming aware that they could again become targets, may have been enough to shoot that trial balloon down. Maybe we're getting to the point where people like Roger Stone are going to have a return influence. And again, we also may be blessed by this Russia connection in that it's going to suck all the political oxygen out of the room and not allow President Trump to move forward on some of his more odious proposals. Already they're suffering a huge backlash over their Obamacare replacement that they put forth this week, with many people pointing out how fewer people would be covered, how costs would escalate. They've got that political nightmare to deal with. They've got the Muslim ban 2.0 that they put forth, which is just a more careful version of what they did before, trying their best to weasel their way around doing what it is they're doing, which is singling out a religion to be banned from entering America. So they've got that on the plate. They've got immigration complaints that are happening. There just may be too much going on for them to go after marijuana, and maybe they've discovered it's not a fight they can win. Maybe they were thinking of the marijuana fight as something that could be a distraction from the rest of these things. I think a lot of what goes on with Trump, especially a lot of his tweeting, is distractions. It is a distraction from the more odious thing that's going on behind the scenes. And maybe they thought the marijuana issue could have been something that they could have ramped up to distract from whatever else is going on. And they're coming to find that the marijuana issue can't be a distraction because too many people are on our side now. We've won the hearts and minds. Like I mentioned earlier, Asa Hutchinson, the former DEA administrator, someone who's always been a very tough on marijuana type of person, has acknowledged that medical marijuana is here to stay, that it's not going anywhere, and that the people by 93% now support it. This is a sea change in what's going on here as far as the ability of our side to motivate and to be able to get our will passed.
I know nothing. Nothing.
All right, folks, that sound means that it's 4:20 here in the Pacific Time Zone. Time for us to take our union-mandated safe debriefing. I got my little rolled-up joint. We got an indica today. Nazar Kush, I think it is. Smells really good. We'll be back right after these messages. Stay tuned.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com. And Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
Criminalizing marijuana, it's costing us a fortune.
You can find Radical Russ online everywhere. Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they aim you to say that.
Uh-oh. Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
A public service message from the Russ Belville Show.
Most of us pirates, we go on vacation to North Dakota, you know, because they've got a town called Argosville. Arr. What are you smoking there, boy?
This is Dan Michaels from DanMichaelsAudio.com, and you're listening to Radical Russ on CannabisRadio.com.
Welcome back, everybody, and we're going to take a look back at the state of Arkansas. It was the lead story in the Cannabis Headline News today. A bill that had come up to the Arkansas Senate would have banned the smoking of marijuana under their medical marijuana amendment. This is really good news because in the development of medical marijuana since about 2010, especially as medical marijuana has come through the legislatures, they have sought to restrict smoking as a method of using medical cannabis. Smoking is not allowed in Ohio, in Minnesota, New York, Pennsylvania. I think I've got those correct. There's a number of states, let's just say, that ban the smoking of medical cannabis. And of course, this is a very difficult issue for many of the patients because the smoking of marijuana delivers the results, delivers the effects that you need quickly and in a method that's easily portable and is a method that allows the patient to titrate their own dose, to know, have I taken enough? Do I need to take more? You can tell that because you're smoking it right now and you can feel it right now. When these legislatures decide to put on their doctor scrubs and with all of the experience they gained in medical school, they decide that, oh, wait, we'll just make it so people can use tinctures and they can use sprays and inhalers and pills and lotions and creams, things that are non-smoking. Well, there's a huge difference there. You ingest cannabis, you eat it, and it's going to take some time to digest it and some more time before you feel it. And think of trying to tell someone who's got chemotherapy-induced nausea that they need to swallow a pill or swallow a cookie and keep that down for 45 minutes until it digests and they get the effect, and then, oh, well, it's not really working. I didn't take enough. So eat another cookie and wait another 45 minutes. That's not practical. You can't have people with nausea trying to keep food down to cure their nausea. It makes no sense. The opponents of the smoking will always say, well, smoking's bad for you. Smoking's got hydrocarbons. Smoking's got carcinogens. Smoking is awful. And I guess if you think that a little bit of a cough is a bad thing or some extra sputum every now and then is a bad thing, but you have to also weigh that compared to the benefits, right? Is smoking bad for my cough versus is puking my guts out, hurting my trachea and esophagus and rotting the lining of my teeth? You'll take the smoking. Now, of course, the opponents of smoking will say, well, we'll allow vaporization. We'll allow vaporization of cannabis, and that'll solve the whole thing. Problem with that is vaporization is not as portable. And I know there's vape pens and there's really nice little vape pens that are cheap and such, but you still have to get the oil, you have to load the thing, you got to hope it's charged, got to have the battery charged and so forth. There is just nothing that is going to match the access, ease, availability, and affordability of joint. It's portable. It's right there. You can light it. Almost anybody's got a lighter. You don't have to worry that the batteries are out. As long as you can get a light, you're going to be fine. And there's plenty of lighters out there. But these politicians, they want to ban the smoking because to them, smoking pot means you're a pothead. You're not a patient. You're a pothead. And this goes back to what I was talking about in the rant, the need to make sure we're separated. Keep us separated. Keep those recreational potheads over there on the no good loser drug addict side so we can keep discriminating against them. That's what this is all about. Patients should be fighting for the right to be able to smoke marijuana because it's good for them. It's the best method they can use in many cases. But non-patients should be fighting for patients' rights to smoke marijuana as well because this is what brings us back together. One community, one fight, one battle. Instead of separating us into medical and spiritual and hemp and veterans and children and CBD oil and all of that. Anyway, the good news out of Arkansas is that their Senate voted 10-15 against being able to pass this ban on smoking marijuana. Now, because it is the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Amendment, it's a constitutional amendment, they got to get a 2/3 approval. A majority won't do. They need 2/3 vote to change this constitutional amendment. That means they need 24 senators. They got 10. So not only did they lose, it's not like they lost by 5 votes. They lost by 14 votes. And keep in mind, a 10-15 vote means that 9 senators didn't vote and another one abstained. So they lost by 14. And there's only 10 extra votes sitting out there to change or to add. They'd have to get all 10 of those people that didn't vote to change their mind and convince another 4 that voted no to change to yes. So trying to ban pot smoking in Arkansas looks dead. Now, the other good news about this is that Governor Asa Hutchinson is not fighting this either. This guy, Governor Hutchinson, used to be the DEA administrator. He used to be one of the reefer mad guys you would see on TV, on C-SPAN, on CNN, all these political shows. He still shows up from time to time, or at least he used to, as the anti-guy, right? He's against the smoking ban. Asa Hutchinson's against banning smoking medical marijuana. He said, quote, clearly when the people voted for it, they probably had smoking on their mind. Smoking in the context that it would be one of the delivery systems, end quote. So folks, the good news that we're getting out of Arkansas, and nationally the good news is that medical marijuana is here to stay. And the news out of Arkansas is showing us that trying to ban smoking is now not working for them. At least in this instance. Of course, 2/3 majority in constitutional amendment makes a big difference. Now, there's another few bills out there in Arkansas that are very problematic. There is House Bill 1451. This is by Republican Trevor Drown. He's a Republican out of Dover, Arkansas. This would ban, now the Senate passed this bill 24-0. 24-0 it got through the Senate. It would bar a member of the Arkansas National Guard or the U.S. military from being not just a designated caregiver, but a patient under the medical marijuana law. So if you decide you want to serve your state in the National Guard, filling up sandbags for a flood or getting called up to go overseas to fight with the U.S. Army, well, then obviously you can't be a medical marijuana patient. Obviously you can't be a medical marijuana caregiver. That's their attitude. Can you believe that? Wow. Now, the patient thing, at least you could point to, well, if they're a patient, they're ingesting cannabis. When you're in the military, you can't ingest cannabis. So you could at least make a logical argument there. But banning the National Guardsmen from being caregivers? Really? All a caregiver is doing is helping the patient. In many cases, the caregiver is the husband or the wife of the patient. And the point of making them a caregiver is so that they aren't busted for possession. Like if the husband is paraplegic and he's a wheelchair, he's homebound, and the wife needs to go out to the dispensary to get his medicine, and she's pulled over for some bullshit traffic stop on the way back, the canine cop and the officer handling him can't run her into the jail cell because she's not a patient. That's a lot of what caregiving is. That's a lot of why we make these caregiver designations, is just to protect the spouse or the partner or the friend or whoever it is that's helping this seriously sick and disabled person. And so if you're in the National Guard, you can't be that person. If you got a sick spouse, your spouse can't get on the medical marijuana program, or if they do, you've got to risk getting busted for weed. Sad. Now, there's another bill in Arkansas. This one's in the House right now. It's House Bill 1460. House voted 87-1 to approve this one. And yet another bill here to restrict who can get medical marijuana. It says, there's a Republican, Carlton Wing out of North Little Rock, would ban workers in safety-sensitive positions from using medical marijuana. Employers would have the discretion to fire or reassign workers in those positions if they have reason to believe that they are high on the job, which they mean is a medical marijuana patient. They don't mean high on the job. They mean just, someone who's got a card. So the House here, in discussions about this, has talked about McDonald's being a safety-sensitive job. Yeah, because they're working around fryers and hot oil and griddles and stuff, right? Well, if you really work it out, if you really want to be pedantic about it, it's hard to find a job that doesn't have something you could call safety sensitive. Certainly restaurant jobs where you're around knives and slick surfaces and hot elements and such could be considered safety sensitive. Absolutely any construction job, something that has safety on its mind. Office jobs, even office jobs in some circumstances could be safety sensitive. And it's just frustrating because it seems to me that these politicians think of medical marijuana patients as only the worst sick and dying individuals strapped into beds or wheelchairs that have no jobs. They're just holding on until they die. And they don't recognize these people have lives. They have jobs. They have careers in many cases. They got families. They got activities they want to go to. But in their mind, no, you can't be in the Army. You can't join the Guard. You can't have a job that has anything to do with anything that could hurt somebody. All of these restrictions that are placed on the access to medical marijuana of certain classes of people are only serving to make it more difficult for everybody to be able to get medical marijuana. For even the most deserving people to get medical marijuana. This is just a continuance of this idea that medical marijuana is a medicine of last resort that this is only for the people that have exhausted every other option, all the possible surgeries, every pharmaceutical. So obviously they can't be, somebody who'd be working as a fry cook at a McDonald's or somebody who's a corporal in the National Guard or something. And besides, if it's medicine of last resort, all those corporals and dishwashers and fry cooks, they can try all the other drugs. They can try the Lyricas and the Humiras and the oxycodones and Vicodins. They can try all those first. Hell, their insurance will pay for it.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
New beginner guitars and banjos are often constructed much better than ones built before your time. Why struggle? Get a new instrument or fix the old one. The trusted professionals at the Fingerboard Extension will evaluate your instrument for free. Repairs are priced for people who work for a living. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
And it's the first time in 2 years, or the first time in a year and a half, that I had a decent night's sleep because the arthritis pain was gone.
You can find Radical Russ online everywhere. Warning. Hits taken on this show are larger than they appear. Do not try this at home. These people are professionals. Or at least they pay me to say that.
Oh, I could have smoked that pot.
A public service message from the Russ Belville Show. You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
Earlier today, we talked about the Colorado Department of Transportation and their behavioral survey. They asked folks about their drinking and their toking and their prescription drug use, and then they asked them about whether or not they drove within 2 hours of having done so, having smoked. And they got back a majority saying that they had. 57% of the people who use marijuana drove a motor vehicle within 2 hours after consuming it. And I talked about how I worry about this. I worry that this is going to be some of the ammo they're going to use in all of this discussion about cannabis and driving to establish, rather than there being a chemical number to hit that is your per se guilt, like the 0.08 in alcohol for a DUI, or Washington State's 5 nanograms per milliliter for a DUI, that for marijuana, they'll establish a time metric. For marijuana, they'll say it's not the amount of marijuana you got in your system, but rather, how soon did you go drive after you smoked marijuana? That they'll change the DUI from driving under the influence to driving under irresponsible conditions, irresponsibility, if you will. This is the direction I anticipate that they go in this driving war. Because now, I mean, before they've always been able to kind of just scaremonger on the issue. But now we've got states that are dedicating funds from their marijuana taxes to specifically study the issue. That's California Highway Patrol is already on this. Nevada's got a statute to allow for that. Oregon's earmarked some money for that. And so when real science starts happening and the data come in on this issue of cannabis and driving, it's going to tell them what we already know. And that is, there's nothing to worry about. If there was something to worry about, we'd have seen the effects by now. My God, the parking lot coming out of Woodstock, right? Should have been, chaos. Well, I guess was actually, but but not of the, mayhem on the freeways variety, right? Like, if there was really any problem with cannabis and driving, we'd see some sort of spike in King County, Washington, around the third weekend of August, when the Seattle Hemp Fest happens every year, and there's 150,000 stoners in one big park, parking their cars all up and along Alaskan Way. We'd see some problems, and we don't see them. We do see statistical spikes in drunk driving after a Seahawks game, though. We do see those kind of problems. These folks are trying to solve a problem that does not exist. They want so badly to be able to continue busting people that use marijuana. And if we legalize its possession, they got to find something else. They got to find some way to paint us as being harmful to society. Some way that we are causing risk and danger to those around us. They got to keep that in mind. They can't let marijuana ascend any more than it already has. It's beginning to threaten the pharmaceutical industries, starting to threaten the alcohol industry, its dominance over these markets. They can't stop the will of the people as far as the initiative states to be able to legalize marijuana. But once it's legalized, they can use all sorts of shenanigans to make it a pain in the ass for us. Like what we're seeing in Oregon with the testing regulations, and what we're seeing in Washington State, where they got rid of medical and merged it into the I-502 stores. The shenanigans they're trying to pull in Arkansas with their medical amendment to ban National Guardsmen, to ban people in safety-sensitive positions. In North Dakota, to try to take away the limited amount of home grow rights they got. You know, the 40-mile halo, they can't grow within 40 miles of a dispensary. They're trying to take that away, too. It continues and continues. They can't stop the legalization from happening, but they can continue to try to restrict it as much as possible. And one of the tools necessary, one of the tactics necessary to ensure that happens is the continued demonization of marijuana users. And they're going to have to do that by demonizing the stoners. People are on the patient side now. They don't believe that medical marijuana is a fraud. They don't believe that people are faking to get medical marijuana to any great extent. And we're seeing that separation. We are seeing that division grow and grow between the medical and the recreational. We see it as legalization is taking place and proceeding and causing medical to be severely restricted. In Washington State, just a shadow of what it used to be as a medical program. Oregon, medical grows being cut down in their plant numbers. The regulations that are strangling some of these small farmers. This is one of the fears I had. I've always had throughout this whole movement, ever since I started in the mid-2000s, with this separation between medical and recreational. It's something that Jack Herer himself said at the beginning of Prop 215 in California, that extending the rights and freedoms to cannabis to one select group of people would inevitably lead to that group of people protecting it against incursions from others, be they the prohibitionists or the rest of the pot smokers who want that right too. So now we find ourselves in a situation that as we get our freedom, as we, the recreational consumers, the adult use consumers, are finally free from the tyranny of a random traffic stop leading to our arrest and incarceration, that has led the legislatures to restrict and pull back on medical marijuana for various reasons, right? They want the tax revenue. They don't want people avoiding recreational regs by slipping into the medical program and so forth. Some of it's just they've never liked the medical program in the first place. But as this continues to happen, medical begins to associate legalization with harm to them. It's harmful to them. And that further drives that wedge between those of us, the majority, who aren't seriously sick or disabled but like to use pot, and the minority that has the rights under this apartheid system. The medical users who are protected not just under their state laws, But under federal law right now, under the Rohrabacher Amendment, protected from federal incursion on their medical use. So we have the wedge being driven by legalization, causing the states to restrict medical and medical resenting legalization. And on the other side, we got us legalizer side beginning to resent medical because they keep getting protections and they keep getting exceptions because they've got a good reason to smoke pot. And we're being offered up as the whipping boys. We're being offered up as the ones that could be attacked under this new Trump administration. Further driving a wedge between the medical and the recreational. It's incumbent on us to find a way to fix this, and I'm trying to talk it through. I'm trying to work my way around it. How do we be more inclusive? How do we convince both sides that it's one struggle, one fight? You know, this last week on ABC, they had a 4-part or 4-night miniseries called When We Rise. And it's all about the LGBT rights movement from the Stonewall riots in the late 60s all the way through 2015 Obergefell decision that legalized gay marriage in all 50 states. And I talked about this before, and I finally saw the final episode, the 4th night, that detailed the struggles that led from California's Prop 8, banning gay marriage in California, to the Supreme Court case that overturned Prop 8, and a similar case, or a simultaneous case that overturned the Defense of Marriage Act. And it was really interesting how they illustrated the politics of all of this, how going for the Supreme Court was a risky move, because if you lose there, you've set national policy that gay marriage is not a right. If you don't go to the Supreme Court, it's still a question, right? But you go there and lose, the question's answered. And so there was a lot of risk involved. There was also risk involved between, do you go for the gay marriage case, which is a very broad sweeping case, versus do you go for the DOMA case, Defense of Marriage Act case, which is a very narrow sort of case to go after. But in all of this, throughout that episode and the other 3, one theme that kept being illustrated throughout the whole of the series was this one struggle, one fight, one group, we're all one. The gay rights movement had its similar factions. It had lesbians who didn't want the men involved. It had white gays who didn't want to be involved with the black gays. It had all sorts of divisions, just like we do. For them, it was, AIDS crisis. It was assassination of Harvey Milk. There was a lot of, the passage of Prop 8. A lot of terrible things had to happen that galvanized all these disparate communities to finally get together and work with one another. I don't see anything that terrible happening to us to galvanize us from the outside. Now, I suppose if the Trump administration went, balls out crackdown on medical marijuana, that would probably galvanize the community to put aside all the hemp, all the medical, all the CBD, all the different factions and work together. But I think that's not forthcoming. I don't think we're going to get a serious attack on medical that could galvanize us all. We might get attacks on recreational. We might get letters. We might get threats on recreational. But do you think that's going to galvanize the whole community? You think you're going to get a statement from Americans for Safe Access or the Hemp Industries Association if they send out some threatening letters to the landlords of big warehouse grows that are growing recreational pot to cease and desist or have their operations shuttered and seized by the Department of Justice? No, medical's not going to scream about that. Hemp's not going to scream about that. The CBD oil people aren't going to scream about that, are they? No, it'll just be us potheads, just us recreational folks. And again, I made the analogy when I first wrote up this When We Rise, but we pot smokers, the ones who just like to get high, we're the twinks in the tenderloin right now. That's what we are in this movement. We are the least palatable, the least mainstream friendly faction of the marijuana movement. The hemp people can always say it's not about dope, it's about rope. And then they get some mainstream acceptance. The medical people, we're patients, not criminals. 93% acceptance across the country. We're just, we're the ones in the leather hot pants and, you know, that are dancing on the Pride Parade floats. And that's going to be hard for Mr. and Mrs. America in Dubuque to get their minds around. One struggle, one fight.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
At Herbie's Cannabis Seeds, we pride ourselves on bringing you the best quality seeds from the world's most respected cannabis seed producers, all at the lowest online prices. You can find Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. All cannabis seeds are sold as souvenirs and as a means of preserving cannabis genetics. Herbie's Seeds in no way intends to condone, promote, or incite the use of illegal or controlled substances. We strongly urge all prospective customers to check their national laws prior to placing an order. Herbie's Seeds at herbiesheadshop.com. Proud sponsors of the Russ Belville Show and 420 Radio.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
Victory over drugs is our cause, a just cause.
All right. Maybe you're high, too.
Georgia. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Yarr, thar be pirates here. Har, 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 har.
You're tuned into the Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation, only on CannabisRadio.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. As we close up shop here, I've got to address the chat room. Here, I'm just trying to pass to you guys. Here, take it. Take it, damn it. So, Kathy in the chat room said something, wrote something that I got to address. I hear it so much. And I'm not picking on Kathy, because I know what she means. But I hear this all the time. I hear this. All use is medical. We all have an endocannabinoid system. Now, this is a bumper sticker saying that you hear from a lot of people that are basically fig-leafing recreational cannabis use by saying you're not really just frivolously and recreationally smoking pot to get high because you have an endocannabinoid system. So the very act of getting high means that you are enhancing or supplementing your endocannabinoid system, and that's leading to feelings of euphoria and well-being. And that's a good thing because you have this system, and that's what that system does, and so all use is medical. So I had a discussion about this with a really good friend of mine, Lindsay Reinhardt, who's a great person to talk to because she calls bullshit on me when I'm full of shit. Anyway, which is more than you'd imagine. Anyway, she brought up this all use is medical thing. How come you won't agree that all use is medical? And here's why. First of all, you could say that a potato is nutritious. All potatoes are nutritious. If you eat a potato, you will gain nutrition from it because you have a gastrointestinal system. And when potatoes pass through your gastrointestinal system, you derive nourishment from them. Whether or not you're eating that baked potato because you're literally starving and it's saving your life, or you went to McDonald's and got some French fries because they taste good and it's fun, regardless, you have a gastrointestinal system and your body is deriving nutrients from that potato. Well, here's the thing. If you don't prepare that potato, if you don't cook it, you eat 10 of them raw, it could kill you. That use wouldn't be medical or wouldn't be nutritious, would it? So not all potato eating is nutritious. Similarly, when we talk about this all use is medical thing, Yes, it's correct to say that all ingestion of cannabis supplements the endocannabinoid system, because that is the reaction of that molecule to that receptor in that system. But if we want to get detailed about the semantics of it, when you say all use is medical, the subject isn't necessarily the cannabis, it's the use. It's that word use. And I submit that not all use is medical because some use is problematic. Some people do develop an unhealthy relationship with cannabis. Even though the molecule they're ingesting is activating a receptor that's a part of their endocannabinoid system, their continued use of it is causing them problems in life. And that is not medical. That's not beneficial to them. Also, you can use cannabis in such a way that it doesn't feel very good at all. I can tell you this from personal experience. I have taken an overdab, too big of a dab, and found myself curled up in the fetal position on a hot sidewalk in Los Angeles early in the evening, dry heaving when I had nothing left to puke. I'd just wretched. That use wasn't medical, even though the inhalation of that massive amount of cannabis dab did produce molecules that were used by my endocannabinoid system, yada, yada, yada. The action I took to get there and the way in which I prepared my dose was not medical. So you can't say all use is medical. You can say all cannabis is medical. You can say all cannabis is beneficial. But there are ways to use it that aren't medical. So that's why I have a problem with that saying. And another reason I have a problem with that saying is because if all use is medical, then there's no point in calling it medical. Right? It's a difference without a distinction. It doesn't mean anything. It's like saying all the kids in my class are above average. All the kids in my class are special. Well, then if they're all special, there's nothing special about special. Everybody's the same, right? So when you say all use is medical, then what's the need to say that it's medical at all? The only reason we were saying it was medical is to justify our use of it. If all of the use is medical, none of us need to justify our use for it. I know that's the end game. I know that's what the people who say that often, what they mean. They mean it as like a Medicare for all way of getting universal health care, right? Like we've got this medical marijuana system. If we just say everybody's medical, then boom, everybody's in this system. Bam, it's legal. We're all protected from the feds. I know that's the end game. I'm saying, though, that end game that you're describing is the whole point of what legalization was in the first place. Why not just go back to legalizing? If all use is medical, then you have no need to distinguish yourself from those of us who aren't patients. If all use is medical, there are no patients. If everybody's a patient, there is no special distinction. We're all just marijuana users again. And that brings us back to all being one, all being part of the same battle. So let's drop this medical distinction. Let's just recognize that people have a right to use marijuana, period. My right to free speech isn't determined by whether or not someone likes what I have to say. My right to bear arms isn't determined by whether or not someone thinks guns are good or bad. Neither should my right to marijuana be determined on the reason I can give someone that's acceptable enough for them not to put me in a cage over it. If we continue distinguishing medical from recreational, we continue tacitly accepting that there should be a line, that a reason is necessary. And that can only hurt the patients who fall just to the other side of that line. They're just not quite sick enough to get the compassion they deserve. Legalization, folks. All of us. One struggle, one battle, one plant. I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it, and it goes down smooth.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show.
Some of the people who were taking marijuana for those purposes, the coroner believes after they died there was drug interactions.
Okay, maybe you're high too.